Hello, my name is Anthony Clark and I'm from Oak Park, Illinois.
My name is Talia and I'm from Hilson in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Kyle Fair. I'm from Mount Zion, Illinois.
Don't be afraid, baby. I'm gonna love you forever. Have no fear, baby. I will leave you never.
How would you describe your relationship with cannabis? What was the history of our relationship? I guess high school sweethearts. I met cannabis in high school. Possibly like so many other kids. Wasn't more than just rolling a blunt after school, before school, a White Owl, something from the gas station. I didn't even know what we were smoking back then. I just knew we got it off the street, just the corner, and everybody had their little connect. But for me, I don't know, just looking back now, like in that moment, I think it's interesting, being a 14, 15-year-old, you're just smoking in a sense. And like I'll be honest and say, I probably wanted to smoke partly because I wanted to be cool, my friends were doing it or so on and so forth. But looking back, as an adult now, like I had a lot of anxiety as a teen. There was a lot of stress. A lot of things I was dealing with, from bullying to, of course, academic expectations to, trying to figure out who I was, as a, young black kid and, a suburb of, Chicagoland area. So I smoked, possibly, every day, just to get through, just to live. So it became a part of my life. Like it was just a natural part of my life. So yeah, positive relationship, loving relationship. And just, as I grew and as I matured, I ended up going to the military for 6 years. Not necessarily by choice, but just having lack of access to opportunity in my surroundings and wanting to escape, a lot of, I think, the violence and a lot of the issues many of my friends were facing. So I couldn't smoke, while I was in the military. So we lost touch, cannabis and I, for about 6 years. I slipped here and there, but we got tested in the military, so it was never to the point where I got popped or got in trouble. Yeah, but we lost touch for a while. But I was shot in 2007, so I got out the military due to a medical disability, because I have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I think that just heightened, levels of anxiety, right? Stress and things of that nature. How to acclimate myself to public settings and things of that nature. So cannabis, re-entered into my life and, has been just a savior for me. It enables me to just stay, chill, just stay in the moment, being able to interact with individuals, be healthy, because I don't fuck with opioids at all, so cannabis has always been there for me. I think, throughout my life, enabling me to interact with society and deal with the pressures that society often brings upon you, whether you are a child or an adult. So I would say that that's my relationship with it. I smoke daily now, whether it's edible, a vape, or use generally a pre-roll for myself. That's pretty much it. So it just allows me to maintain, and it's really been a godsend. I just recently broke my foot, have a fracture, and it was interesting how when I was going through that process, I had surgery, like the surgeon was like, I wish I could, prescribe cannabis to patients, but I can't, his hands are tied because I refuse the opioids like that they gave me the prescription. Like I'm not putting it into my body, it's extremely toxic, but this was the best, painkiller that I had, going through my recovery process. So yeah, that's pretty much my relationship.
That's interesting that the doctor too is like, I wish I could prescribe cannabis, just with like how heavily like big pharma is in like the medical industry, like.
No question.
Yeah, their hands are either in the pockets of big pharma or their employers. So
yeah.
You can't make a recommendation for cannabis.
Yeah, I think it's deep, because I think for the most part,
I've been told that by some healthcare professionals.
The majority of healthcare professionals I encounter or run into, or just the majority of people, like I run into a lot of legislators and things of that nature. Like no one, in Talking 101 could give a good reason of why cannabis should not be legal, on a federal level, or why medical cannabis as an industry should not be expanded, and why the hemp industry should not be invested in and expanded. It always goes back to money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It always goes back to the money. Like, you can't say anything about health. You can't say anything about mental or physical health. It's always money. So it is interesting.
Why do I use cannabis? I use cannabis to help with the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and the symptoms that I still live with from a traumatic brain injury that I had in 2012. I don't want to get into the details of what happened because it's kind of hard to live through, but I was the victim of a violent crime, and I'd used cannabis before recreationally, like on occasion, weekends and whatnot with my friends. I'd never thought I could use it all day as medicine before until after this happened to me. When I was recovering from the traumatic brain injury, I had a lot of pain. I was on opiates for the pain, and I couldn't get out of bed, just a zombie. I had to take anti-nausea medications to keep from throwing up. The way the head pain worked, if I would lean my head a certain way in bed, I would become overcome with nausea and have to vomit. Cannabis helped with that, and just generally I felt like I lost a lot after this happened. So I had moved out of the house I was staying in and in with my in-laws. So I was very depressed from all this. And my wife is actually who ended up buying me my first bag of cannabis, because at the time it wasn't legal for medical use. You couldn't go to a dispensary and buy it. So that's how my use with cannabis really started.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry for what you experienced and what you went through, but I'm so happy that you seem to have support and were able to find, supportive medicine, because
Definitely.
Cannabis is indeed medicine. So, I'm someone with PTSD, you have PTSD, so it's just deep to hear that, to make those connections. And one thing I think about, like even connecting back to myself as a teen, like I'll make an I statement, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but I feel like a lot of youth are going through life with PTSD or like PTSD-like symptoms, but they're undiagnosed, right? So I feel like adults primarily don't realize that a lot of our youth are self-medicating, like I was as a teen, as a child, and like you thankfully were able to discover, wonderful wife of yours to bring you a dime bag and a supportive wife. But no, it's just, that's what it made me think of, in the sense of how many of our youth are self-medicating and how our world, generally don't understand that. Particularly if you're not wealthy, like you're living, middle class, lower middle class, you're poor, you're working class. There's a lot of shit on your plate, that you're exposed to, whether it be a direct victim of violence or you're exposed to violence through the news on a daily basis. You're over inundated with just trauma.
Just living in it, you'll definitely become hypervigilant. That's one of the symptoms of PTSD.
Yes.
If you've lived a life where shit's happened to you.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Question for you, when you were when you first were diagnosed with PTSD, did you notice yourself, was it hard for you to like make connections and have like emotional feelings, Did you experience that?
Yeah, I kind of was numb to all emotions. I could feel anger, that was probably about it. Sometimes I get sad. I can't really remember my emotional state too much.
Yeah, that was similar to me too. When I first was diagnosed with PTSD, I could not make like true, genuine, like emotional connections with anyone. So often I would just pretend, I would just act my way through it. Like, oh, I'm supposed to laugh. I'm supposed to laugh in this moment, or I'm supposed to be sad in this moment. But anger was my primary. So again, I'm a teacher, so again, still connecting it to our kids. How many of our kids, are angry, and you're a father, right?
Yeah.
So just it's important to just consider and think about. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
even like I also have PTSD, so like even wow.
Yeah, like not to celebrate. Like,
oh, we all get PTSD. Twinning, no, but like
right. Same these.
But like then there's even like the anger at like not being able to feel anything but anger, and like the cycle that creates too. And like how you were talking about like kids like having to self-medicate, like I'm so in my head all the time, like thinking about like how much like projections impact like what's societally normalized. So I feel like a lot of why cannabis like isn't normalized, obviously huge portion of it is because of like the prison industrial complex and like systems of oppression, but also like I feel like a huge part of it is like not to be like older generations, but like a lot of the older generations like are not having conversations around mental health.
No.
And so like it's just projections of not taking care of themselves. So anything that's like illegal or actually does help, like there's like the conversation shut down around like going to therapy for kids, and so then kids self-medicate, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah,
that's deep, you know. Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head in the sense of the stigmas that are attached to mental health, right? And I can't speak for anyone else, but growing up in a black family, you know, often we're taught to, you don't talk about it. You know, you deal with it yourself, you bottle it up because no one wants to hear it, you know, and going to a therapist or, you know, going to a hospital, that's unheard of. You know, something's really wrong with you, right? But for me, I think a mental health walk should be just as normalized as any physical health. Like if you break your arm, you don't hopefully have to keep it to yourself. We know, I mean, our medical insurance is ridiculous right now. We need Medicare for all in my estimation, but if you break your arm, you go seek help, right? I broke my foot, I want to seek help. So if we're having issues mentally, we should be able to go seek help too. And you're so right, so many don't because of those stigmas and they don't want to be judged. And they seek out, you know, alternatives, you know, whether it's cannabis, hopefully it's not alcohol. I view alcohol as negative. I mean, I drink, but, you know, abusing of alcohol, you know, and things of that nature. So that's what I think when you shared that.
And also I'm glad you're able to get like access to cannabis too, like during that time. Cause I mean, like I don't know like what you went through, but like I'm sure
it took about 3 years before medical cannabis was legal and being sold in the store between when that happened and when I could actually see a doctor and even get a prescription. So, yeah.
That's so trapping too. Like, I'm sure that feeling like during that time was just a lot.
Well, yeah, it just the invasive thoughts that would, you know, come in to my mind that would remind me daily of what happened, the trauma. Cannabis just pushed all those out of my mind. Somehow I didn't think about that stuff when I was on cannabis. I just get a little cannabis in me. Orally, smoked, whatever, just would get all the invasive thoughts out and I wouldn't have, you know, PTSD triggers at work.
Right. It's just so nuanced and deep, like to think about how your quality of life improved. But just think about what it took to get there. Like imagine if your wife had been pulled over, you know, just like in a random traffic stop. You know, she's, you know, caring about her loving husband, you know, hoping that your quality of life is improved because you're just steeped in depression and bedridden. But if she would have been stopped,
right? Like
how would your family have been impacted? Because then now she's charged, now she's in the criminal, like you said, with the disproportionate number of individuals that I've been through our prison industrial complex, you know, predominantly black and brown families. But that's deep to think about. Or you know, now you're smoking. You know, it's not legal yet if you're caught.
Well, actually, I have a card, so I'm
legal
now.
You have a card, but I'm saying when it wasn't, you know, it's deep to think about.
Yeah.
Like, and how many more million people are like you where they may not be able to have their medical card yet for whatever reason, because the access is not easy. Like going through getting your medical card is not, it's so complicated. And how does our system work? Often they expect the most marginalized individuals with the least amount of you know, capacity to do things to go through these steps and these processes and pay, and so it's not easy to obtain. So I just think about how many are self-medicating and their quality of life has improved, but then the dangers they're facing based upon our criminal justice system. So.
I guess I'll answer a question. So this says, how has cannabis impacted your life? My relationship with cannabis like started 2 years ago. And my life has been better, so much better since. Oh my gosh. I had like a lot of internalized, I think, stigma towards cannabis when I was growing up, not like towards people that smoked it, but because my mom was addicted to opioids like throughout my childhood and was also like an alcoholic as well. And a lot of my PTSD is like from her and like narcissistic emotional abuse and like sexual trauma with like my parents, my mom, my stepdad, to be specific. My dad is amazing, but just those two. And so like seeing that and then her viewpoints towards cannabis, my brain was like, I don't want anything to do with like anything that could like impact me.
Right.
But then when like I was introduced to cannabis from a friend, like, and I hadn't been diagnosed with PTSD yet too, but I think that, because I also had a misdiagnosis for my PTSD to just be generalized anxiety disorder, which is not just to say just generalized anxiety disorder, but like there are differences. And also if you don't have like the proper diagnosis, like it's hard to find like proper healing methods too. But yeah, so once I was able to like just try cannabis for the first time without even like knowing how it was impacting symptoms, because I didn't have the dialogue to even name the symptoms in the first place, like it was just, I just remember myself just kind of reevaluating like everything in my life in terms of like my mental health, and like cannabis really has, I think, just taught me to like take care of myself and like not overexert, especially as like, you know, if like you're a victim of narcissistic like emotional abuse, and then also just like a feminine person in the society, and then also like non-binary, like we're often forced to kind of like take on the role of being like a parent to people and put like our emotional well-being like below everybody else's. So thank goodness cannabis came into my life, because just this past 2 years have been fantastic in terms of that. And like I was chronically ill for 7 months like prior to this, and it was my liver actually like went out because of the amount of medications they were giving me, none of which like was cannabis, but like cannabis was the only thing that was able to like get me through working like 16-hour days to pay my bills, while also like having mono and having my liver like fail. So I love it, to say the least. Overall, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I'm so glad we all have our own walks, you know, and I'm so glad you're getting through your walk, and that cannabis, you know, is helping you get through your walk, and that's deep. I'm sorry you experienced what you experienced.
Thank you.
You know, no words, of course, can make that better, but I think that even, you know, with what you shared, it shines light on, like with the opioid epidemic. And, you know, I think when you think about that epidemic, of course, you're thinking about those that are directly often addicted to opioids. But again, those connections that are made to family members, you know, to, you know, daughters, you know, sons, and whomever's in that household, how that addiction also impacts others who aren't directly addicted, you know? Like,
yeah, and like even how cannabis like helps with overcoming opioids, like that baffles me too, the fact that like that conversation still isn't happening. And like the thing that directly helps me as like inheriting this trauma from like just my family being like evangelical, and then from Europe, like the amount of like stigmas that come with mental health there too. And then nobody addressing like alcoholism, like having bipolar and personality disorders. Like the thing that helps me taking in all of that trauma like could have healed them like years ago from like the addictions to opioids and like just everything in general, and like that blows my mind. Yeah, it's deep, you know, because I think, like, unfortunately, and again, I'm making I statements, you know, I don't want to talk for anyone else, but I feel like we could have already been here. Like, thankfully, at least in Illinois, you know, some bills have been passed that allow, if you get an opioid prescription, you could turn it in, you know, and get prescribed cannabis now. I think Senator Harmon helped pass that bill, a local senator out of Oak Park. But we could have been here. And just for me, you know, again, being raised in a black family, you know, being around, you know, a diverse community in Oak Park, but having connections to other communities with my families, I feel like why we're here now is not necessarily because our politicians and our government truly care about like humanity,
again, I think it's always financial, and they're realizing that the opioid epidemic, which has existed for decades and decades and, you know, directly impacted like black and brown families, is now impacting like, for a greater extent, like, you know, upper middle class white families, right? So now the conversation has to be expanded because now we're talking about, you know, their economy. So it's just interesting how it's taking us this long to get to this point when we could have been saving lives and improving the quality of lives so much sooner.
It's always been a public health thing, and they've tried to make it a criminal justice thing at first. Like you said, didn't really become a public health thing until it was affecting white folks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
definitely agree with you there.
it's deep. You know, my father is 70 years old now, you know, and growing up, you know, he was in Vietnam, so he dealt with that, of course, you know, deal with drug abuse and the things they faced in Vietnam, Agent Orange and things of that nature. But he grew up in a time where he didn't personally smoke, and it's beautiful to see. Like, I almost get emotional thinking about how, as a teenager, he and I would butt heads over my cannabis use, right? Because he would see me smoke, and, oh, you know, you can't do that, and most likely, you know, for the most part, he was saying I can't do that because he knew how society, you know, would treat me, you know, how the criminal justice system would treat me. But fast forward to now, and we're actually like smoking together. You know, we can sit down, and he's embraced cannabis. And his quality of life as a 70-year-old man, he's living a better life than he was at 50, you know, due to his ailments mentally and physically and the things he was facing. So we bonded over cannabis even. You know, our relationship has grown closer. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So it says, which groups of people in society does cannabis prohibition go after the most? You know, I gotta take a hit before, you know, so for me, you know, based upon how I view most things in this world, like, we live in a capitalistic society, right? You know, propped up, in my opinion, by white supremacy, you know, spawned by colonialism. So no question how our government systems are set up and structured. They're structured for, you know, it's like class wars, the oppressed versus the oppressor. So our government systems are structured for that top 1%, predominantly white, wealthy men, to flourish, to profit. And it's structured for them to profit on the backs of black, brown, and poor individuals, you know, and that's just my opinion. You know, I grew up studying the Black Panther Party. You know, Fred Hampton, you know, is from, you know, Maywood, Illinois. And one of the things, you know, he accomplished in his short time on this earth, before, you know, the government killed him, you know, he worked with, you know, poor white individuals. You know, he worked with poor brown, because it was a class issue, right? So I just feel like the war on drugs overall, that should be ended. Like, I feel like the entire war on drugs should be ended. We should decriminalize all drugs, you know, because instead of being reactionary and punitive, we need to recognize and I feel, be positive and supportive, you know, education and support, and reaching out to individuals that need help. Locking individuals up, I don't feel helps anyone. You know, it just extends the pain and extends the harm. So for me personally, I feel black, brown, and poor individuals throughout history have been directly impacted by prohibition. And honestly, they're still being somewhat directly impacted by legalization, because when you legalize, just similar to when we have to access our medical cards to get them, there's so many structures in place to keep black, brown, and poor individuals from profiting, you know, from becoming growers, to opening up their own dispensaries, to opening up small businesses as entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry. We're still shut out oftentimes. So there's still a lot of work to do. You know, I think in Illinois there's going to be a study set up, because again, we legalize in January, to kind of follow how the legalization of cannabis is going to impact, you know, the marginalized communities. But it's deep, you know, so throughout history, again, disproportionately black, brown, and poor individuals have been incarcerated, have been stopped. You know, what is one of the main reasons police officers pull over, you know, someone? They may be following you because you're driving while black, but their excuse is possible, you know, marijuana usage, right? We're suspecting you're smoking weed. So they bump up their numbers, and people get caught up in the prison institution for this shit, you know, for something that's natural. for something that helps, because I mean, it's just deep. I could go on all day, you know, with the cash bail system. You know, I have former students that were like in 26 in California, Cook County, for like months because they couldn't afford $260 to get out over weed, you know? And then they may cop a plea and now you're on probation, and then, I mean, it's just a cycle, right? So yeah, for me, it's been throughout history, predominantly Black, brown, and poor individuals. And I'm hoping as we continue to legalize, as we continue to move forward, we recognize it's bigger than one individual. We recognize it's a class war, it's a class issue. And though we have different backgrounds, you know, we come together, and not to get too cheesy, but yeah, not to get too cheesy like a stump, but like seriously, like we come together and like.
I agree with you. I want to ramble on too. I mean, 4 times more likely to be arrested for a cannabis crime and convicted of the crime and not be able to like stay out of jail. This war on drugs has never been enforced fairly, ever. I think that may even be the reason it was drummed up in the first place.
No question, no question, no question.
Because of the way it seemed to only target certain individuals, it was almost like it was on purpose.
Yeah, because who's it, Nancy Reagan, just say no? Was that Nancy Reagan's slogan?
Yeah.
Just say no?
Well, before then, even what Reagan said about the war on drugs and why he wanted to start the war on drugs in the first place.
Didn't he specifically?
Black people and political dissidents.
Super predators, right? You know, I was talking to my history class about this. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or heard of it. So we have so it was a newer movie that came out, Birth of a Nation. There was some about Nat Turner, you know, a slave that led a revolt. But the original Birth of the Nation, like in the early 1900s, was extremely like racist. And it's just interesting how they use language is used to justify like oppressive laws, like how natives, what were natives saw as savages, right? Like natives are savages, you know, they're uneducated. We have to inundate them, and, you know, with colonialism, our religion, our language, but it justifies us taking their land, right? Blacks are savages, you know, enslaved Africans are savages. That justifies us being able to enslave them, you know, use them as slavery. And then you go into the war on drugs, super predators. You know, these young Black men, these young brown men, women, and they are savages. They're super predators.
Mandatory minimum sentences. So the judge can't even hear out the cases. Well, we have to give you this sentence because that's what the law says.
Exactly, because it's often not the people that are directly involved, but it's everyone on the sidelines, right?
Absolutely, like the bystander.
Exactly. If you could convince the bystanders that it's okay to oppress a certain group of people for whatever reason, you're good. And they use that language, they use these justifications to push it forward, and it's deep. So we have a lot of work to do, because I think families have been destroyed. Like, generational capital has been lost socially and economically based upon the prohibition of a natural plant. You know?
I know you heard of how the prohibition of cannabis started in the first place.
I've heard several. I mean, you want to share?
Well, I know that it had a lot to do with, like what you were saying, with the money. There was a guy named William Randolph Hearst, and he owned a lot of timber, and he also owned newspapers. So to protect his interests in timber, which, you know, hemp can be used to make paper. So what do you need timber for? Anyways, to protect his interests and DuPont Chemical, because they had made a bunch of synthetic fibers that were pretty strong, but they weren't as strong as hemp. So to keep that business from ever flourishing, they made a bunch of fake journalism about it. Said Mexicans used it, blacks used it, and he'd use people's xenophobia to scare people into thinking marijuana was bad, but they'd known it by the name hemp forever, had no idea they were the same thing.
It's deep. It's deep.
Oh my God.
I think one of those yellow journalism stories actually said that white women would want to seek relations with black jazz musicians if they tried cannabis. So they were playing on xenophobia and racism, and that's how they got it.
Saxophone.
That's how they got it illegal.
Saxophone, a blunt, and your woman.
Yeah, back
like,
then
gone.
you could buy a jazz cigarette at one of those venues and watch the music for a nickel, I think it was, for the joint.
So you can watch the movie Mo Better
Blues. Definitely part of America, you know, prior to like 1930 something. I can't remember when they exactly made it illegal. 37?
Hey, it's about profit, like you stated. It's about profit. It's about, again, maintaining capitalism. And in order to have capitalism, you have to have a bottom. Who's maintained at the bottom? You know, people of color, black, brown, poor individuals. We're all connected. And then, of course, you say, it's how can we eliminate something that
Yeah, they eliminated their
is
competition.
going to take away from our bottom line?
And then in, you know, recent times, I think Big Pharma has been the biggest pushback because, you know, like I was saying on the drugs that I had to take earlier, like the painkillers and the anti-nausea drugs and the sleeping aids, cannabis can replace all of those.
No question, no question.
And you can grow it yourself at home. So what do you need their medicine for?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that right now with these. Like, honestly, like everything coming out negative about vape pens, like whatever you think personally about vape, but like, you know, all the deaths that are being reported, and that's horrible. But I feel like it's misinformation, you know, because for me, so many individuals, like if you buy bullshit products on the street, you know, you're more at risk. Like I think a lot of people are buying knockoff products. They're not, you know, tested. You know, there's zero regulation, you know, whether it be a street corner or a gas station and so on and so forth. But if you go through a dispensary, like a medical dispensary, like that's quality, you know. But I think Big Pharma's putting a lot of money in right now, you know, kicking back at like vapes.
Oh yeah,
and, you know,
Vergence of doubt.
exactly.
For sure.
So a lot of people are now pushing back, oh, you know, vape pens are killing our youth and so on and so forth, without again having the real information to recognize that just like anything, you know, most likely you're not going to buy moonshine off the street. You may, I don't know, but you most likely you're going to buy moonshine off the corner from somebody you don't know, possibly. So why would you just, you know, continue to buy a vape pen from somebody who has no recourse or no accountability? So we definitely have to work on education, I think, as well.
Because even like there's
legalizing and regulating it would get rid of all those middlemen and people selling bullshit. We wouldn't have to worry about that.
right, and like just the fact that there's so much just news on how like jewels are horrible, vapes are horrible, but like there's like the fact that I have to have like a college database to find out like tons of studies about how like big pharma in general, the fact that I have to have access to that to like have that information, like juxtaposing how much like jewels are horrible, vapes are horrible, you're gonna die, like that juxtaposition I think shows like how much big pharma is like just controlling it. And even, I mean, alcohol is just like a very good example of like how much alcohol like can destroy the body and like destroy people. Like if you want to drink, of course go for it, but like the fact that that's legal and cannabis isn't, like that's also
deep. You know, for me as a teacher, you know, one thing I aim, because I teach high school, you know, so I run into high school students all the time, and it's just my personal journey as a teacher. I think it's extremely hypocritical, like if I encounter my students and if they ask me, do you smoke? And, you know, I run into so many adults that are like, no, you know, no, and just wag their finger, right? And I think we've all been teens before. You know, we're all still young. Like if you tell someone no without sitting them down and having like explanations or education, and really, well, they're just gonna do it, right? So I'm extremely honest, you know, with my students, and you know, I am open to studies in regard to at what age someone should start smoking. You know, again, I started at 14. I'm not saying that was right or wrong, because I know the brain is developing, but to just outright, again, based upon the positive impact that cannabis has on so many of us, and based upon the fact that our youth often are self-medicating, I think with greater education and honesty and openness, maybe they wouldn't be going to, you know, some bullshit supplier to get, you know, a vape pen or a jewel, you know, and maybe they wouldn't be, you know, putting knockoff, you know, or bullshit product in their bodies if they had adults that they could trust and go to and sit them down and talk to them. And that's just my personal opinion. You know, I feel like education and openness and transparency goes way, a greater way than just saying no and just shutting it down and pretending like we're higher than or better than, like, oh no, I don't smoke. No, I do. I do, and it's been the best thing for me. So I think that's interesting too. I don't know, how do you have children? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's interesting. I tried to hide it from my children. There was one night I was watering my garden and I had the door open. Usually I have the door closed behind me. and it was hot in there. I was trying to let some of the heat out. And my son snuck out of bed. He was real young. I don't know if he remembers it, but he come down to the doorway, and I knew he was there because I heard him say, "Wow, flowers." So that's how he's always viewed it.
Right,
flowers.
just flowers.
People like smelling flowers.
Right.
You know? So I kind of tried to normalize it. If he asks what it is, it's my medicine.
Yeah, I love that. See, normalization, you know. I think that's important, you know. 'Cause I truly do, because, you know, I don't have the exact numbers with my school particularly, but we have a lot of youth that smoke, right? We have a lot of youth that have access to cannabis. And I think with just misinformation and lack of, again, normalization, lack of transparency, eliminating the stigmas, our youth are out there lost. So I think it's better for them when you're open about it and when you have understanding. You know, I've had many talks with like teens, you know, just about how life is structured, how the criminal justice system is structured, and you know, I think it benefits them, you know, when we're open. I really do.
What strain is that?
I'm straight sativa, so
Oh,
like
cool.
I'm 100%
Good.
high THC
Yes.
sativa.
We're on the same page there.
I don't get
Indicas
indica
are
smoker.
okay
I
for
love
the
them.
evening when you need to sleep.
Right,
But if you're trying to do stuff,
right, but see, I know indica people like midday, like in the morning, like some people are straight indica, like
Wow.
yeah, so.
Dang.
But I'm straight sativa, like all day, every day. So yeah, sativa, sativa, sativa.
Love it.
was
High
that
THC.
iced tea and lemonade flavor? I'd seen
Yes.
them on some
Yes.
menus, but
You want to taste it?
wait, this is iced tea and lemonade flavor?
That's lemonade flavor,
Oh,
and
I
this
was
is
gonna say,
mandarin.
Oh,
like,
okay. I had the taste
not is it
completely wrong.
mandarin orange? Yeah. Yeah, but that's lemonade, iced tea lemonade, I think.
That's really tasty.
Huh? Okay.
Thank you. Are these just you? I haven't used one of these before.
Yeah, you just hit it
Okay.
into the lights at the bottom, and you know you're.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh my God.
Wow,
Thank
it's
you.
very lemony.
It is. It is extremely limited. Like
Yeah.
you get that taste up here. No, but again, I love it. Whose question is it? I forgot already.
I think it's probably my turn.
Okay, it's your
We've
prompt.
been gone in a while. Are most people in your life supportive of your cannabis use? Oddly enough, not on my wife's side. They're not.
Okay.
Interesting.
They're not supportive of my cannabis use. My mother-in-law has kind of always viewed it as an addiction, which is just too much for me because now I have a prescription, so I can say it's not an addiction to her, and it still doesn't really hold water with her. You know, she's a registered nurse. She thinks she knows a thing or two, and she's kind of in the willfully ignorant camp. She could learn a lot about cannabis and know that it's not as bad as she thinks it is, but I don't think she will.
I'm sure that's super like frustrating for you too, like considering how
Very.
much you've been through, and then like it's like the person you love's parent, and they're just like no. But
Right.
I know like my stepdad's a nurse, and I've just like not totally different situations, but at least like just to speak on like the medical industry. Like my best friend, they're disabled, so their experiences of what they've told me, and then like me being in the hospital like 6 times in the past year, like I love doctors and they're wonderful, but there is like a level, I've noticed like a level of ego that does happen within like the medical industry, especially with people that are very like anti-cannabis, and it's super frustrating because it's like, this is your job and you, like to help people, and yet you're like completely like diverting the conversation around what actually could help them.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. You know, because I don't know, I make those like, because I feel like the issues we face are like interconnected, right? So, I mean, it gets to the point where I think it's hypocritical for someone to be like, you know, we care about mental health, right? We care about people living with disabilities. You know, we care about Black, brown, and poor communities, but yet you don't see the connection to cannabis, you know, which plays a role in all these communities. You know, people with disabilities, how it helps them. You know, I know so many individuals that cannot work like whatever normal is, but a normal 9 to 5, oftentimes based upon, you know, a non-visible, you know, disability, you know, high levels of anxiety, PTSD, and how cannabis has, changed their life for the better. Or I have a buddy that has Crohn's disease. He was in a bad position, but when he was able to get his medical card, cannabis changed his life around. So, I think a lot of doctors, I think it's, again, misinformation, sometimes ignorance, oftentimes, again, profit, right? A lot of doctors recognize that profit margin is going to be hit, and then that, always tying into, like, this is a gateway drug. I think that's what they often push, to parents and to the public. Cannabis is a gateway drug. It opens you up to, and I couldn't disagree more. I do not believe cannabis is a gateway drug. Cannabis is a medicine. And I think that's how we have to start. We clearly do, but as
the only way that gateway theory holds water is in a black market scenario, because you can't buy other drugs at the weed store, the dispensary.
Right.
But a street dealer would have other drugs that they might offer you, or to be available to you at least.
It says politicians and candidates running for office are notoriously cagey about their own experiences and use of cannabis. What makes you willing to dispose of this taboo during your campaign? So if you're not aware, I'm running for Congress.
Oh my
I'm running for
gosh.
office. I'm a teacher. I run my own nonprofit. And back in 2018, I was nominated through Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats, along like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Paula Jean Swearengin, Cori Bush, Amy Villela, and so many other wonderful individuals. And one of our immediate stances was, back then also, was the legalization of cannabis with a focus on racial justice. The incumbent was not for that. I know clearly, I think we're all old enough to remember, Bill Clinton, when he was asked about his cannabis use, and what he said, I did not inhale. And for me, again, I'm not a special person. I'm just a normal, everyday individual that I think is just tired of status quo, tired of the oppression that exists, and I'm fighting back. But I think if we really want to make change, and if we have a platform, you just have to be courageous with your platform. You just have to be yourself. I'll never pander for a vote. I'll never lie for a vote. So I feel like anyone who's in the public eye or, running for office or so on and so forth, I have to be honest and transparent with my mental health walk. Telling people that I've experienced depression, I've experienced anxiety, I've experienced being so over inundated with thoughts where I was afraid to come out the house. But I started therapy, I started cannabis, and that helped save me. Like, I'm open about that. So I think I have to be just as open about my cannabis use, because lying to individuals, I think, plays a direct role in enabling status quo, in enabling, again, the oppressors, the top 1% to remain. We have to empower ourselves, we have to educate ourselves. So I don't hide this at all. I tell people on a daily basis, cannabis saved my life, it continues to save my life. And with me being open, via social media, like, so many people have reached out to me, asking about, okay, what's the process to get my medical card? What's the process to, what dispensary do you go to? What type of strain works for you with what you experience and what you go through? And, I had an older individual, my father, opening up, and we bond now because he's open to cannabis use and has helped improve his quality of life. So being open has saved lives. Clearly hasn't saved enough lives. That's why we have to legalize on a federal level. But I just feel like we need more individuals that are courageous, more individuals that aren't riding the current wave that exists of, neoliberalism and, centrism, and we can't rock the boat. We have to, no, this is war, and I'm gonna be on this side, well, no, not the right side, I'm not right side, I use my right hand. I'm gonna be on this side, but, with everyone who believes in, eliminating inequality, and this is part of that, legalization with a focus on racial justice is a direct part of building greater equality in our country. So just for me, I just think it's extremely important, to be honest, as a political candidate. From everything from legalization of cannabis, we're also focusing on the decriminalization of sex work. We think that's extremely important. So all these connected issues that exist, just be honest. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but.
I think that's really good. So I feel like for a long time, politicians wouldn't even talk about cannabis or advocate for criminal justice reform in regards to cannabis, because they would bring themselves into scrutiny about whether or not they used cannabis. And if they did, they were trying to keep that stuff so hush-hush so they could get elected or even get re-elected. Right. I was even hoping Obama was going to decriminalize or legalize marijuana. Even his second term, I was like, please do it. but it didn't happen. I was kind of disappointed.
No, too tied into, again, the establishment, too tied into the establishment and where your money comes from. Like the incumbent in our district, perfect example, he was not for the legalization in 2018, but because we ran against him, he is for it now. Not fighting for it, but he's signaling he supports it, but yet he still takes money from Big Pharma. So I think that also plays a role in our political world in the sense of who's backing and supporting your campaigns. But because I'm 100% grassroots candidate and there's so many others, like I can afford, I think, to be genuine. I'll be genuine no matter what, but like the people support me, right? So, I mean, if you don't believe in who I am as a person, it's okay, but I'm still gonna fight for you. So I think that plays a role also. Like Big Pharma is, just like the NRA, they have their claws into a lot of people, the lobbying industry. We got to take money out of politics, and I think if we did, people will find their backbone. Right now, not too many people have it, but thankfully, my parents raised me to just be genuine, stand on principle. So here we are, me smoking with you wonderful people, so and singing the praises of cannabis.
Heck yeah. And I think that's like, I really love everything that you said about like being open. And I think even like to have a politician be open about it, like somebody who, because people regard politicians as like in power. So to have like this sort of like authority saying that like this stuff is okay, and then also, no, thank you though. Like with your identity groups too, like I'm sure that's opening so many doors for people to like be okay with using cannabis with themselves, and like that whole internal battle of like being scared of stigma validly on like an oppression level, and then just like interconnected relationships level too.
Right.
So like that's so good that you're doing that with your platform as well, because like humans create culture, so the fact that you're normalizing it is amazing.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Again, I thank you. I thank each and every one of you. We all play a role in this, right? It's an interconnected fight, and I believe in energy connection, not to get too deep, but we all play a role in this. Any and everything that we do helps to hopefully move the needle forward. And for me, just the nuance of cannabis and prohibition, like I've lost, and I'm just thinking it's hitting me, so I've lost 11 students to gun violence since I've been teaching. I'm going on, 10 years of teaching. I'm about to say 12 because unfortunately we just got a report that a student of mine, they just recently graduated, was shot on the west side of Chicago. But not every time, but a lot of the violence that has occurred, a lot of the violence that took many of my students' lives was connected to like drugs, because you have these bottled up territories. We talk about redlining, right? We talk about Jim Crow, we talk about the issues that exist. So you have these hoods where access to opportunity is almost null and void, like it's so scarce. So you have people fighting for the same scraps, honestly, fighting for the same scraps. And you have people that, cannabis feeds their families, on these corners that they have, feeds their families. That's how they make their money, because they're made for whatever reason, So many get into the criminal justice system, get out and want to work, but then they can't because now what? They have a record, who's going to hire them now? So many of my youth have lost their lives over, again, cannabis. So I feel like legalization not only, I think, addresses so many issues from the investment standpoint, from the educational standpoint, but also the violence standpoint, gun violence and overall community violence, where I think that will decrease, hopefully, because we're gonna bring more money into communities, create more opportunity, as well as greater education. And that way we're going to eliminate that bottleneck of, just crabs in a barrel fighting for scraps in communities. So it's deep. So when I see my students, I also think about them as well and why this fight is so important and attempting to be open. It's deep.
Also, I'm sorry about the students that you've lost too.
Yeah, we've all been impacted, by tragedy, and I just think again about their families, the mothers and fathers that we've had to help, and until we change the system, we'll unfortunately have to continue to help because it's not going to stop. That's why I think it's so important to speak truth to power, and if we lose, this race is bigger than one race, right? It's a movement. But more importantly, it's being ourselves and being genuine. I'd rather lose being genuine and being honest than lose pandering and, playing a role within a system that has perpetuated oppression for centuries. Yeah.
What did it feel like being treated like a criminal for creating medicine for you and others? Oh, wow. I kept it a secret for so long, and I always thought I would never get caught. Ended up being a couple of friends I was pretty close with that informed on me.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really messed up. I only had to be in jail for 7 days, and I always knew that it was an inevitability, so I wasn't really surprised. Like, my raid went way differently than most people's. When they came, they knocked on my door, like rang the doorbell.
That was a polite raid.
It was like, that's not how it usually goes.
No, it doesn't.
Anyways, but when I answered the door, they were all standing there with long rifles pointed at the door. And I was like, oh, okay. And I knew what they had the warrant for and why they were there. And at first, they were relatively nice with me. Towards the end, they made a very weird comparison. This one cop, he was the lieutenant of the Mount Zion Police Department. He asked me if I watched Breaking Bad, and I said, yeah, I've seen it. And he said, well, so you're kind of like Walter White. And I'm like, I don't really like the comparison. He's like, okay, well, you know how they hid money in that show? I mean, you can make this go a lot faster if you just tell us where the money is. And I insisted that the money that they had found in my bedroom drawer was all the money that I had in the house. But they tore my house up looking for money that didn't exist. They couldn't believe there wasn't money. Like that I had to have like a whole bunch of cash stored in the walls or something. And I, the whole time was insisting that the plants down in my basement were for personal use. They said, it's a lot of plants. How can that all be for your personal use? And I can't tell them my wife also suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. What happened when I was the victim of a violent crime, she witnessed. So she suffers from a lot of the same symptoms that I do, minus the, brain injury stuff. So they would not take my, pleas that this is for personal consumption. I had a card, I had a pretty good alibi that this was for personal consumption. But they said because of the amount of plants and what I had in my house, that it had to be intent to distribute. And I didn't know I shouldn't be talking that much with them. I definitely snitched on myself quite a bit because they, when pressing me on the whole, is it for personal use, I admitted after being questioned for a long time that I gave it to family members too. I have some family members that have qualifying conditions, but their doctor's not going to sign off for it. And one of the people that I know in my family that I was supplying with it has a qualifying condition, but has a job that they fear would be in jeopardy if somehow they found out that they had a medical cannabis card.
Wow. That's deep, and it makes me like, there's a saying, and it says like, crime pays for everyone but the criminal, in a sense. Like, crime pays for everyone but the criminal, everyone but the poor, because we know it's like big business, like asset forfeiture and seizure. Like, they're looking for your assets, they're looking for your money, they're looking for whatever they can try to connect to.
They took a lot.
Exactly.
They definitely
your drug
took a lot
business, and then they take that money and invest it in the militarization of police forces, right? Mm-hmm. So it's huge business to target individuals, and even if you are, they most likely knew you were using it for personal usage, but they don't give a fuck. For them it's, you're a dollar sign.
That street value fine was pretty hefty.
It's crazy. Now we could place him into the criminal justice system. We could, gain access to his assets, seize his assets. That's more money for us. So it's huge business. It really is. And man, that's deep. That's deep. And I'm sad that you went through that, But I'm glad you're still here though. So many
Yeah,
They're
it
no
could have
longer
been a
here,
lot
right?
worse.
Exactly.
Like
Like you
you
said, they knocked on your door. I know people.
Oh, absolutely.
You
I
know,
what you mean.
Chicago, they just, again,
Yeah.
just break straight in, guns drawn, sights on. Sometimes they're shooting without even saying anything because, again,
Grenades and stuff.
grenades, again, because we are commodities.
Terrorizing.
It's terrorism. It really is. It's domestic
Absolutely.
terrorism. We are commodities.
I was
so.
expecting that. To get the opposite was kind of different. I actually kind of thanked him for being polite because my kids were there, and
Right.
that would have been very traumatic. The way they handled it kind of lessened the trauma of them losing their dad for a week.
Yeah, because I see stories all the time where doors are just broken off the hinges, just like you say, homes ransacked, and often they have the wrong home, so they're not even entering in the right dwelling. And then of course they're not even trying to help the family. They're not giving any money to fix their door. They're not addressing the mental impact that raid just had on, the children that had to witness that. So it is domestic terrorism. Like our police departments are, for the most part, one of the most dangerous gangs, in America. And they're about profit, just like any other gang for the most part. So it's deep.
And then I just think about how, you have PTSD, so the fact that they were berating you with questions, without any sensitivity to that, but then crossing over to the neighborhoods in the southwest side of Chicago with the police, there's absolutely no. Recognition of how that could be impacting people too. Yeah, and the trauma they're inflicting through their terrorist and terrorism tactic, because it's just it's so much.
No, it is. There's so much nuance and interconnected, and like he said, he copped a plea. Even that, again, plays into our system, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't have given that plea to anybody who was of color.
Exactly.
I already know that.
Yeah, so you got a good plea deal, even though it's still
Even
a plea
my
deal.
bond compared to some similar crimes when I was locked up, there was somebody in there. It was a subsequent offense, but they were black and their bond was the same as mine. They were in there for possession of 2 ounces. I was in their possession of between 5 and 11 pounds, 25 plants.
Right. That's the level of privilege. Even in that, we're
recognize
oppressed. Yeah, we're oppressed, but even in oppressed classes, there's still levels of privilege that exist. But yeah, that's how they catch so many of our youth. And then they push for pleas, oftentimes unfair pleas, to again continue. I don't know, I watch Netflix a lot. And I was watching, did you see Free Meek Mill? Have you seen that?
Not yet.
So basically similar, he was, they assumed he was selling. They set a raid on his home. And prior to them entering, he had come outside. He had a weapon on him for protection. And it was deep, but that's how he got caught up in the criminal justice system. And they put him on probation for a decade. It's ridiculous. A decade of probation. You're more than likely going to reoffend, that's why recidivism rates are so high. And they would the judge would bring him in for bullshit reasons, but that's on a macro level, right? Meek has a platform. How many people don't have platforms,
Exactly.
How many people don't have the financial means and they're going through similar,
Yeah, even seeing, I think it's just horrifying to witness to, the amount, just looking at media in general, a lot of white folks and how weed is glorified within music videos, or even white rappers trying to go into the culture of rap, which is predominantly black and brown, and then with weed and everything, and then that being glorified, but there being no discussion around any nuance to it. And even within colleges too, there's a lot of white dealers for weed, and I'm this is just privilege in and of itself, that y'all aren't getting caught, and if you do, it'll probably be you'll get suspended from college maybe, but you won't get yeah.
That's deep, yeah, because I've never, in my life, in my 30-odd years on this earth, I've never seen, say, a Willie Nelson painted in the same light or picture as, say, a Meek Mill. That's deep to think about in a sense. Willie's he's Willie, right? But you see that all the time, you say, particularly with the push for legalization, you often see a bunch of white faces smiling, corporate. They have their dress shirts on, and they have some cannabis in front of them, and I mean, that just
Yeah.
completely whitewashes and ignores the absolute fucking trauma that people have faced for generations because of prohibition, you know? So it is deep, you're right, it is deep.
What do you think about venture capitalists that just come into a state
Oh.
right after legalization, and then the state makes those fees and licenses to get into the industry so high that
Exactly.
people who don't have access to capital
Right.
can't even join that industry, even though they probably were, you know, fueling that industry all throughout prohibition.
Oh yeah, they were making money when it was prohibited. Now they're gonna make money when it's legalized. But that, again, that plays a role in, you know, continued oppression. You know, like I look at it, until we change like systems, like at a systemic level, right, where people truly have the power. It's similar to like slavery or like the women's suffrage movement throughout history. Like you have slavery that ended, you know, in 1865, you know, based upon legally. But then what do we go to? The prison industrial complex, right? We went to Jim Crow laws, right? We went to the war on drugs. So again, if you can't have somebody on the plantation, now we're gonna have somebody in prison. And now they're gonna still work for free. And that's just, it's similar. We're going to now shift, we're gonna legalize it, but because it's legalized and not just decriminalized, it's legalized now, we're going to create such a gap between those at the bottom, the oppressed, and those at the top, the oppressors, that the oppressors are still going to continue to make the money, and we're still going to continue to be frozen out and impacted by, you know, legalization. You know, so that's why we have to like fight and be proactive, and you know, in regard to, okay, how are we using this new taxed income? You know, this money that's coming in now. Where are we investing it? Are we investing in the communities that have been the hardest hit? You know, with infrastructure and education and job creation and, you know, addressing, you know, our food deserts and so on and so forth. Because we are hungry when we, but it's deep. So I hate it, I really do. But again, it's by design. And until, we have some people definitely fighting, like Chicago Normal, like shout out to them and other organizations that are definitely fighting against it. But it's real, like you say. They're just parasites. They really are. Again, feeding off us as commodities.
The gummy, it hit right away.
Oh, yeah.
That's right, you're fasting.
Yeah, that was my meal. No, I'm good. I'm gonna eat something later.
Because it's 10 milligrams, so it's decent, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, edible tolerance is pretty low.
Uh-oh.
10's good.
No.
It just enhances that.
Right, no question.
The first edible I did, I fell asleep like 30 minutes after, and
Really?
I was like,
You knocked
oh, it was medical grade too, and I was like, okay,
Oh,
we're
yeah,
done
so
for
good
the day.
You start smoking and then you want to get into like these deep conversations, right? Like that's a stereotype, we all get deep, but no, it's like seriously, like I think we're headed into like one of those dystopian futures, like seriously.
Say more on that.
Because to me, it's just like the wealth gap, and I know we're getting like deep and off, but like the wealth gap continues to increase, right? And we have so many individuals, even with the ACA, that still lack healthcare, right? We have so many individuals that do not have access to employment. You know, our homeless populations continue to expand and grow. Like things that should be human rights are denied us. So as the gap continues to increase, and then we also have leadership that's not addressing climate change, you know, so I feel like our earth is, I mean, it's dire straits. We're talking, what, under 12 years now in regards to irreparable harm. So I could just see it one day, like it's not too far off for me to see like the elitists, like the top 1% hovering above like the earth. I know it sounds silly, but like literally like hovering above. I was literally
just thinking that
they're
gonna leave us.
Right, they're gonna like
just
leave.
Trash the planet.
Exactly,
and leave
we
us.
are commodities. We are a resource, and like they pull out and strip any area of a resource, they're stripping us of our resources. And once they're done, I mean, where are they gonna go next? You know, so again, that's just how I view it. Whether it's the moon, like they're thinking about, we're gonna have to form a new colony and leave them behind, or like some type of, you know, again, you know, city above, you know, the earth. Like, what was that? Alita Battle Angel? I don't know. I just saw that movie.
It sounds like Elysium. Is that
yeah, that was a movie.
Kind of sounds like the plot of that movie a little bit.
So I get deep into that, but I really believe like our elitists do not care. Like they don't give a damn about anything but profit. We are resources, and we're being stripped. And like any mind, like once the mind is empty, you know, they literally move on. So I think somehow they benefit from us being poor, from us not having access to work, and many of us being content oftentimes with just simple government assistance, that doesn't change anything for us systemically. It just allows many of us to just live,
like exist.
Yeah, exist long enough to work a $6 an hour job and get caught up in the criminal justice system, and now we're free labor. It's just all interconnected. But you're absolutely right. Like, so many people are alienated based on the fact that cannabis is medicine to them. And we even see it at the top level. Like, look how many athletes, particularly like in the NFL, who, whatever you think about sports, I think it's all political. Myself personally, it's like sports are distractions, like in Roman times. But anyway, like, how many of them are losing like millions of dollars, and people are judging. Oh, they can't stop smoking. Like, they're smoking for a reason.
They all have post-concussive syndrome.
Right, exactly.
Truly, oh my God.
Exactly, they're smoking for a reason. Mental health is a reason, and the mental impact that the sport has, the physical impact, the ailments they're experiencing. So it's real deep. It's real deep. I know I went on like a high tangent there, but
no, it's important because then it's also like people will, be like, oh, you're smoking cannabis, etc. To like people that like they once like watch for distraction, whatever, and then people in like their real lives as well. But then it's like, if they're seeing cannabis as like this bad thing that's like destroying like somebody's life or like ruining like their interactions towards others, like guaranteed the people that are saying that stuff like don't do the inner work towards harm reduction of like how their actions are impacting others. I mean, like literally them saying like, oh, cannabis is the devil's lettuce, like that shit. Or it's,
the devil's lettuce.
But yeah, like just like they're normalizing in conversation to people around them, they're creating harm. So it's like, it's just like from a psychological level, it scares me too for like everybody in general, like that is anti-cannabis. And then the people profiting off of this industry too, and like the elitists that are gonna be like hovering over us, watching us in hell, like that whole thing.
But the devil's lettuce,
A lot of them probably come from a place of fear and ignorance. They just don't know anything about cannabis, and like talking about cannabis in their generation was taboo, They might think you've used it if you even bring up the subject. So probably didn't even have these type of conversations back then. So they don't know nothing about it other than what they've seen in popular culture and movies and TV, and that can mischaracterize us to think we're all Spicoli.
But it's deep to even think about the number, like whether on a political level or like in just local communities, the number of hypocrites that exist. Because even if, again, think about our intersectional movements, like how many politicians, particularly on the right side, how we read about, they were staunchly against gay marriage, right? But then it comes out, they secretly had a gay relationship behind the scenes and had to resign and so on and so forth. So I believe like we truly have so many individuals that are against even what they personally would live or believe in, all for profit, all for party. They're putting everything else before humanity. They're putting everything else before what's best for a collective, because they benefit from lying. They benefit from being hypocritical as individuals. Because I know a lot of people that smoke. Like the majority of individuals I know smoke. I have a lot of people that come to me, like you help other people. I'm sure you help other people for help. But it's just for fear, for the stigmas. Not everybody's willing to be vocal. Not everyone's willing to step out front because of repercussions. Like who knows, this video could cause us repercussions. But I think, again, I appreciate you all for your bravery, because I think this is more important, it's more important than us. This is a movement, so it's deep. And I'm looking at another question. I think we all have probably time for one more question. It says, so I'm gonna combine two questions, because one question asks about the 2020 presidential primary, and then the next question asks, if you could share some herb with one of your idols, dead or alive, who would it be? So I don't believe, I don't have an idol. I don't have people that I just like, I'm not saying the definition of idol is like worshiping somebody, but I don't have like outside of my mother and father, who I'm like extremely close to, I don't have people that I'm just like, because I don't believe like one person, not one man, woman, or they can save anyone. Like we save people as a collective and we all play a role. But individuals that have inspired me, there would be three that if I could like sit down and smoke with, The first would be Muhammad Ali. I'm just a huge Muhammad Ali fan, and I just think it would be dope to just sit down with him, light up, and just work on some phrases like float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Like, I don't know, I just think it'd be to hear his stories, you know, hear the amount of courage. Speaking of courage, like he went against the grain. Like when they wanted him to go to war, like he stood up and said no. And it wasn't like he was even gonna go fight. Like he would have been just traveling around like Joe Louis and, you know, doing little boxing matches here, and he said, hell no. You know, those men and women and they over there are not my enemies. Like, ultimate courage at the height of his career. So I would just love, and I mean, I'm tatted, you know, with a quote of his, you know, so I would just love to sit down with him, smoke, and just talk about his life and the courage, the amount of courage he had and how that's impacted me. Another person would be Snoop Dogg, because I just feel like, I don't know, like I feel like whether purposefully or not, he's been one of the greatest advocates towards cannabis legalization. And I would just want to know if I could hang with him. Like, I know I can't.
You never know.
Yeah, I just feel like I couldn't. But I would just want to be like, what are you smoking, Snoop? Like, what strain do you have? You know, what are you working with over there? And just see if I could even last a session with Snoop. And getting back serious, I would say Bernie Sanders. Because for me, I think he's my leading presidential candidate. I think with everything that we discussed this today, he's the only candidate that's truly trying to change the system, and he can't do it alone. Like, it's gonna take all of us. But for me, I don't even think he smokes, but just sit down with him and be like, hey, old man, like, thank you. Like, he gets it, right? So like, thank you for your fight. And thank you for inspiring somebody like myself who used to be jaded with politics and thought there were zero representatives out there that truly listen to the people. So yeah, I would like one with Bernie and just, yeah, feel the burn, right? Like, that would be me. So, I don't know.
It's been in the slogan all along.
Right, exactly. It's hidden. It's a hidden message. Feel the burn, like feel it in your chest as you inhale and exhale. But yeah, so that's me. Muhammad Ali, Snoop, and you know, God rest Muhammad Ali, and Bernie Sanders. So holler at me, Snoop, if you ever see this. Let's light one, for real. Bernie, I don't know if you're down too. I'm ready.
Okay. When you smoke cannabis, do you ever get epiphany on an area in your life or others? I think that like cannabis has really allowed me like space to process, especially with like my PTSD being like so like anxiety all the time. And then also like I have really bad ADD too. And like even though I'm on like 27 milligrams of Concerta, like it's still, my brain's all over the place all the time. So like being able to have like more sativa based cannabis like in my life, where my brain is kind of wired for emotional avoidance and then literally wired to like be like, what's over there? Let's think about this thing all the time because of ADD. Like it just allows me space to like breathe and then process, which I'm really grateful for, just because like, I mean like processing and like having like kind of, like I told this thing to my therapist, I think like about a month ago, where it was like, I finally feel like my brain is quiet and like I'm quiet within myself. And I feel like cannabis like allows me that space that like I haven't really had to be quiet with myself and then just like take agency over everything I'm experiencing and like process it regardless of like where my brain's at or like what situations are happening in my life or yeah, in general. So, and I mean like in epiphanies in other people's lives, I think like processing kind of relates to that too. And I guess like by extension, because like all of our interactions influence each other continually, like with how humans like create culture, like the more that I'm able to process and be present with myself and also like do the inner work that comes with like PTSD of like not projecting and like not letting like your anger or like any sort of, you know, all those fun emotions like impact your interactions with others, because I'm able to like not project, like my interactions are better, and then it causes like better relationships with like me and other people too, you know, so then it like by extension, you know, it makes everybody's lives like better, I guess. Yeah.
100% agree. You know, thank you again for sharing insight into your journey and your mental health walk.
Thank you.
I 100% agree with everything that you shared. For me, how, living with PTSD, like I truly feel like cannabis has brought me my humanity back, like my ability to build relationships. And as you state, it impacts other people. Like it's not only better for me, but it's better for my parents, it's better for others that love and care about me, it's better for others that I can help or have any type of influence over, or individuals that help me. Definitely, it's directly addressed, the depression that I would deal with, is directly addressed any anxiety I had. Because when I first came home, after being shot and after being in the military, like I could not literally go into like high populated areas. I couldn't sit with my back to a window or, just so many different things that exist, how your PTSD manifests itself. But, and I don't believe in normal, so I don't want to say, brought me back to normal, because what is normal, but it brought me my humanity. And this allowed me to, even though there's so many things fucked up with this world that we're fighting to change and address, I'm enjoying the struggle, I'm enjoying the struggle. And I feel like that's directly thanks to, cannabis. So I'm glad that you're able to enjoy the struggle too.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that as well.
Thank you.
This was such a good conversation. Thank you for having this. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.